The business community denounced Raza Unida. The local newspaper led the charge.
Raza Unida has brought nothing but hate, distrust, turmoil, and complete financial irresponsibility to our community. The only way to stop this disruptive and destructive force that is attempting to gain complete control over people's lives and livelihoods is to refuse to vote for candidates who are supported by La Raza Unida.
The Anglo population reacted with horror and recoiled from this prospect. They, after all, had been at the top of the heap, and all of a sudden the levers of political power were removed, and other people had them. And not only did they have them, but they were almost turning the tables in terms of, as the Anglos perceived it, you know, they were now suffering discrimination.
There's about 30 or 35% of the Mexican American here in Zavala County that vote for the Raza, and the other 60 or 70% are not voting or afraid to vote.
Why are they afraid to vote?
They are afraid of harassment and intimidation.
But in fact, Crystal City leaders couldn't stop the Raza Unida Party, which was gaining support throughout Texas. In 1972, Ramsey Muñiz, a former football star at Baylor University and an attorney, announced that he would run for governor under the Raza Unida banner.
The key to the city, but we just don't want the key. We want the key to the whole state.
Ramsey Muñiz was a very attractive candidate. He was very able, he was tireless. I mean, he went out and campaigned day and night. He is what people wanted to be like. He made you proud of being a Mexican American.
And he'll tell you, I went to fight for my country. Hell, if we're good enough to die for the country, we're good enough to get an education in this country.
At first, the Democratic Party of Texas was unconcerned.
I don't think that we took the party that seriously. We didn't think in terms of impact, in terms of numbers, that they were making the strides that they hoped to make, and that it was still important that we address the broad Mexican-American community of Texas to win elections, and that's what we did.
The Ramsey Muñiz campaign brought widespread attention to the Raza Unida Party.
We need to have 67,000 registered voters in the state so that we can get on the ballot.
Chapters appeared in Nebraska, New Mexico, Michigan, and Arizona. Before long, the Raza Unida Party was registering voters and fielding Mexican-American candidates in 16 states.
The Raza Unida Party crystallized the sense of nationalism, or a culmination of nationalism, I could put it that way. And a lot of my compañeras and compañeros consequently began to say, you know what, we need to manifest our movement's mission and goals in art form. Talking about politics and talking about struggle and power, but we're talking about art form and poetry and talking about writing, you know, and it was a very psychological, liberating force, what I call the decolonizing of our minds, to not only promote an identity of Chicanismo or you know, who we were as an indigenous people, but more importantly, as creators.
In Colorado, Corky Gonzalez saw his dream of a third political party for Chicanos envisioned at the Denver Youth Conference becoming a reality. He lost no time organizing a Denver chapter.
Would you like to register in La Raza Unida?
How do you spell that?
But in Los Angeles, Raza Unida produced division in the Mexican-American community.
So that we can get on the ballot. If you've been a Democrat for 50 years, And you've seen the conditions remaining the same for 50 years and nothing ever changes.
The idea of leaving the Democratic Party for this new organization was too radical for many Mexican-American voters. But Chicano activists saw it differently.
We can start working to elect our own things, elect our own candidates. It takes you about a minute to register.
The positives were that for the first time we had our own party. On the negative side, however, was what happened with Raul Ruiz and Richard La Torre electoral campaign in Los Angeles, which was pitting Mexican against Mexican.
We're tired of everybody saying it's not our jurisdiction.
Assemblyman Richard Alatorre was the incumbent.
And the reason that we ran in this race was primarily to challenge the Democratic Party. It's
Raul Ruiz, a young college professor, was the challenger.
All poor urban people are going to vote Democrat. And
Raul Ruiz was a Raza Unida candidate, and the party, the Democratic Party, had not historically been responsive to our needs. So we knew the need. I mean, we saw the logic and the virtue in taking on another Chicano Democrat.
The idea of a third party was particularly offensive to those of us who had been working for change within the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. Young people were much more open to the idea of a third party, of an ethnic party, than some of us who had been around, and sort of the GI Forum, LULAC folks.
Ruiz lost, but his Raza Unida campaign took a substantial number of votes from the Democratic Party. For the first time in decades, a Democrat had lost to a Republican in the 48th Assembly District of Los Angeles.
Do you feel that the Mexican American is going to desert the Democratic Party this time around?
Not at all. I don't think so. Why should they? Democratic Party is the only party that's ever done anything for the Mexican Americans. You might know that.
Vital government services controlled and provided by what is
Many Mexican Americans argued that the Democratic Party hadn't done enough.
On the City Council of Los Angeles, made up of 15 members, not a single Chicano. Of the 5 members of the County Board of Supervisors, there has never in its 100-year history been a member from a minority community. The state legislature numbers 120, yet you will find only 2 Mexican Americans, both in the lower house. We have no U.S. senator in Congress, and only a single congressman sits in the House of Representatives.
Established Mexican-American politicians were part of the problem in the eyes of young Chicanos.
So many of us who were just barely getting our feet wet in terms of our political baptism at this time were becoming very angry and disillusioned at everything that represented the institution, not to trust anybody who represented the system, and that we felt that they had not done enough and that they had, in fact, sold out.